Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer. I woke up this morning with a heaviness in my heart that I knew I needed to pay attention to. Before going to sleep last night, I watched the 2018 documentary on Andy Irons. He was the surf legend whose untimely death was linked to his self medicated drug addictions and bipolar disorder. Having recently watched a friend slip away into another world as she self medicated with marijuana, which seemed to draw out her manic parts, I could so deeply relate. Her partner, family, and I, amidst other friends, I'm sure, tried to put the pieces together around a story that could somehow make sense to us. Yes, she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder before I met her in her 20s, but I'd spent over 10 years with her while she was highly functioning, non medicated, balanced, thriving, and grounded. I had seen marijuana have an unusual effect on her, which I would describe as losing connection with our reality and entering into a spiritual or manic state that she reveled in, wanted more of, but ultimately it disconnected her to herself while giving her the impression that the opposite was happening. As she prepared for a trip to Amsterdam, we discussed the need for her to be careful with substances. But the truth is, I believe she wanted to check out, or rather, what she might describe as live her own life, unconstricted by societal norms and boundaries. She perceived herself as opening to freedom, new experiences, a heart opening that knew no boundaries. This resulted in her collaboration with strangers she'd meet living on or off the streets, and her acceptance of invitations into dangerous, life threatening situations. My goal was simply to remain in touch and not lose communication. But her stories were wild, and I was most definitely worried and in collaboration with her husband around how to get her back to the US. Having hit bottom, perhaps not rock bottom, numerous times in Amsterdam, she finally returned at the ultimatum that the only money she would be given was in the form of a flight and hotel room to stay in at the airport the night before her flight. Her return, unfortunately for me, did not draw us closer, but rather she began to detach from everyone who loved her, and instead she aligned with an internet community who supported radical ideas and behaviors. She lost touch with societal norms and what one might consider acceptable behaviors. She adopted a room in her house as her little cave and imagined that her husband was keeping her trapped there. She was delusional on many fronts, and it was heartbreaking for me to be communicating with a person I barely recognized any longer. It seemed that there was no getting through, and we would just have to somehow ride it out, waiting for something horrible to happen. Her perception of danger was non existent, and she perceived this as loving and accepting of all. It's been almost 2 years now. She's divorced and living abroad somewhere. Her husband does all he can in the best way he knows how and remains in touch with her. She's asked him to not share her whereabouts and not to give anyone her contact information. That said, while this experience has been sad for me personally, this film heightened my awareness that it's challenging to comprehend what this experience might be like for the individual going through it. Last night, watching the Andy Irons documentary, I saw my dear friend. I saw my tribe and his family and friends. I saw the shared heartbreak of those that are witness and close to someone with bipolar. And I saw and heard the honest struggles and torture of one who lives divided in mind and heart. The Andy Irons movie is a treasure. It's raw and honest, sincere and deep. It is a tremendous educational gift to the world, and I'm reminded of the power of film as a medium to truly convey an intimate glimpse into another's world that we otherwise would never know or perhaps understand. As an IFS practitioner, I'm once again reminded of the extraordinary gift that the internal family systems modality of therapy is, especially within the current context of the world we live in, the bombardment of stressors, the typical life experience that people have of being judged or criticized. feeling unloved or unlovable, that those that struggle internally with feeling other or out of control are forced to be even more alone under these pressures. While labels might be helpful in certain circumstances, we must consider what they do to the individual that's being labeled. At points during the Andy Irons film, you hear and feel the weight of what he's carrying, the depression and hopelessness that he just can't bear it any longer. Whether people are able to state this or not, especially when not, the feelings of being alone and different will surely eventually result in negative outcomes. Within the IFS model of therapy, we understand and accept all parts of the individual. Extreme behaviors are simply extreme parts of a person and absolutely do not make up the entirety of who they are. But often people with bipolar, for example, have been labeled as such, and possibly even for a long time. In other words, they go from therapist to therapist, or psychologist to psychologist, or psychiatrist to psychiatrist, and end up feeling that there is something innately wrong with them. IFS has laid a foundation upon which trust can be reestablished between an individual and these aspects of themselves that have been so confusing to them. IFS has provided context within which one can heal and gain insight because of the foundational belief that we all have an inner self, and self is wise and compassionate. In fact, one gentleman who was diagnosed as bipolar upon his first few sessions of IFS therapy stated, "I see myself as human now." This is just one of many of the IFS miracles I've witnessed or heard about. So just for a second, relate to this yourself. If we feel judged or guilty or ashamed, how open are we to being loved, to be seen, to get help? Not very. To even acknowledge or admit we need help is often to face the fear of being judged. What if together, as a society, we do our very best to remove this additional barrier that we impose on others who are already suffering? More than 5 million Americans suffer from bipolar disorder, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. We even judge anxiety and depression, two states of experience that are at an all-time high in our country and world. And the National Institute of Mental Health also reports that an estimated 2.8% of US adults had bipolar in this past year, and that 4.4% experienced bipolar disorder at some time in their lives. And of course, we don't really know how many cases go unreported. I am so grateful that we're entering a time of greater awareness of the predicaments of our society, of being human and solving for what it looks like to live in greater harmony, connectedness, and peace. I am so grateful also for all of the celebrities that have come forth with their stories of struggle with anxiety or bipolar or the variety of other mental health issues that exist, in order to help others not feel so alone or hopeless. I've created this and other videos related to IFS because I've seen the incredible healing powers of this beautiful modality of therapy. I so hope that this content has the potential to help you or someone you know. Please share this with anyone who you think may need help or hope, and let us together shift fundamentally how we treat mental health by knowing that healing is possible, and we best heal when we are loved, not judged, but loved in the process. To know more about me, what I do, what I offer, you can visit my website at jennifer-french.com. Thank you.